The Giants will host the Panthers in Week 7 on October 24th. Carolina went 5-11 in 2020, and to get more into what to expect out of the Panthers this season, we are now joined by the radio play-by-play announcer for the Carolina Panthers, none other than Mick Mixon. Mick, you got Lance Medow and Jeff Feagles here on Giants.com, Big Blue Kickoff Live. Greatly appreciate the time today. Hope all is well on your end. How are things?
Things are great, and I have a lot to talk to you about before you ask me any questions. First, it is an honor to be on with the great Jeff Feagles. I mean, the career length. How long was he in the league? 35 years, something like that. I mean, he had pension, 401k, all that, and just really a classy guy. And I remember so well some of those pinpoint coffin corner punts that he authored against the Carolina Panthers. So, Jeff, I appreciate you, the pride of the University of Miami, and looking forward to talking with you. The other thing is, I want to say hello to Dave Gettleman. You know, we consider the Giants kind of, I wouldn't really say the Panthers' sister franchise, but a lot of folks in the Carolinas have followed New York because of some of the connections that we have with the Southeast.
Well, absolutely. There are a lot of connections between the two teams, and Matt Rhule was a former Giants offensive line coach and assistant. So there are plenty of connections, to your point, Mix. And let's get started there, because I think similar to the Giants, and maybe even another layer of connection, is you've got two teams now entering year two when they brought in new coaching staffs, and two coaches that were not previous NFL head coaches. Of course, Joe Judge had experience as an NFL assistant, but what was Matt Rhule, in your mind, Mick, able to establish in year one that has Carolina excited that they can now carry into year two, given the fact that he was given a 7-year contract? And normally that means that coach would have a little bit more leeway and flexibility than others who are on short-term deals.
Yeah, good call, Lance. I think first, Matt Rhule is an exquisitely gifted communicator. I mean, he is Jim Valvano funny. He is Mike Krzyzewski, determined and competitive, bordering on combative. He is a Dean Smith kind of immersion in the technical side, timeouts, down distance, 2-minute, the strategy of the game, and then with a modern kind of flair for metrics and performance psychology and nutrition and stretching and all that. So I'm not saying that he's the proof will be in the years to come. But you asked me, Lance, what do we learn in that first year? And that is that Matt Rhule is not going to be denied. I mean, these players, and Jeff, I'm sure, has played with coaches, a tapestry of coaches, some that you're afraid of, some that you don't want to disappoint. I think the Panther locker room would tell you that they don't want to let Matt Rhule and his coaches down. That's the respect, the currency of respect that Matt Rhule trades in that locker room.
Well, I do know a little bit about Matt Rhule, a couple things. I know that Tom Coughlin hired him for a reason, all the potential and what he could be as a coach going forward, and he was trying to get hired away by some of these NFL teams, but Coach Coughlin wouldn't let him, so he ended up having to go to the college ranks, and you know what happened there. So I agree with you. There are certain coaches that just, they just come in and their presence is felt, and they're good people, and players like to play for guys like that. I know that the Panthers, they did better than their 5-11 season with Matt Rhule as a rookie coach, because they lost some close games last year, and I think that coming into this season in 2021, they're going to be better. And the big elephant in the room question here, and obviously we've been very fortunate to be able to watch this young man on Sundays because he's lived around here and played for the Jets, and Sam Darnold. Talk a little bit about how his presence has helped his team, and what the outlook is for him going forward. I know certainly he's got some weapons coming back through free agency and Christian McCaffrey, and that's
I can only give you the Panther perspective, Jeff, and I want your call on this and your opinion and Lance's as well. But from the Panther standpoint, the coaches are fired up about him. They think he can get the ball downfield. They think if the Panthers can surround him with the weaponry, robust O-line, Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, Jets at receiver, an upgraded tight end position with Dan Arnold coming in, and then just the career reset button, the ability to just kind of get a chance to just rack this thing up and start new in a media market that may not be quite as intrusive and aggressive. I think the coaches, Sam Darnold, really this is playing to rave reviews so far. So that said, you guys know of Sam Darnold. You know him in a different way than we could here, since we hadn't even gone to training camp yet. So what does your crystal ball tell you about Sam Darnold and the Carolina Panthers?
Okay, I'll just follow through quickly. I think that you hit a lot of points here, and I know, as being a player in the league as long as I was, I know that sometimes, you see these players that come and go on teams, but, they don't have such a great career. Sam Darnold he has a young career right now, but when you go to another team, sometimes the market, as you mentioned, it's not easy to play in New York, and Sam did a great job with that here. I think he'll find it pleasantly comfortable being in Carolina with the media there. The other thing is that I just think that, the coaching staff he's around, all those young coaches will help him, and you hit the nail on the head. For any player, Nick, if any player in the position is surrounded with playmakers, take a chance. And I think that when you have Christian McCaffrey coming back, Chuba Hubbard, their fourth-round draft pick, that's going to help them. They got some wide receivers. You said they could throw the ball there. So, and then Tommy Tremble, the new tight end, which they didn't use a lot, the tight end position in last year. Those things combined, I believe, can really help Sam Darnold, and I think he's going to be really good, because I think the change of scenery is just so good for this young man. Just reading about him, he's just a really good guy, and I wish the best luck for him, except for the Week 7 game. That's for sure.
Well,
you see it the same way, Lance?
Yeah, I was going to add to what Jeff said, and I mean, he really laid out the talent pool around him. As you can attest to, Mick, and Jeff certainly can from all the years that he played in the NFL, the environment makes the quarterback. And I think if you look at the Jets situation, unfortunately, there were some durability concerns with him, and there were some offensive line concerns. And I think now he's walking into a situation where the environment is far more encouraging. And that brings me to the next question, Mick, because the offensive line was a bit of a game of musical chairs, for the lack of a better term, with the Jets. I know Carolina focused on free agency. They obviously have Taylor Moton as their centerpiece. What do you see out of that group that can add to what we just talked about with respect to Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator, and the coaching staff, that can maybe help Sam Darnold gain that stability that perhaps he was lacking with the Jets?
Well, I'd say it's not that sexy to talk about the O-line, but I'm glad you brought it up. This demonstrates your command of this beautiful game of forward progress that we all love. And this is an area where the Panthers are tremendously upgraded through free agency. There's a couple of really good guards on the roster right now. There's an intriguing prospect named Brady Christensen, BYU. So he comes, his chronological age is younger than his football age. Or older rather than, because he'll be just getting going as a pro, but yet he's 25 years old. Incredible measurables. I mean, he's got a 10-6 broad jump. He's got the bench press, the 40, a sub-5 40 time at 310 pounds. So I think the Panthers feel very, very good about the ability to block. I mean, and it's not the worst idea in the world. Block all the ghosts up, so your quarterback can focus on the route tree.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I feel like the foundation of every team starts with the center, the linemen, and you guys have done a good job with that. Talk to me about, Christian McCaffrey, one of the most dynamic players in the National Football League, his rehab, coming back to the offseason. What does it look like for him going forward, and do you see him full for this season? And he's exciting to watch. I enjoy watching this guy play because of his size. When you look at him, he's not a big dude, but man, he's productive.
He's like that pit bull terrier where I saw one the other day in Charlotte Uptown, and this pit bull terrier looked in my eyes, and I was scared. I mean, this apex predator, it just had this look in his eyes as if he knew he was badasstic in ways that I was not. And McCaffrey's that same, just tightly wound, muscular, just this low center of gravity. I mean, you would love him. I mean, he's this any-era football player, and he's got the passion for the game. He's not one of these cats that wants to get a check and have his posse and have his big house and have interested in what the game can do for him. He's interested in what he can do for his team and his contributions he can make to the game. He's got soft hands, dancer's feet, a very good blocker, good in pass pro blitz pickup. And he said something I thought was interesting, Jeff. He said, and Lance, he said, when he was trying to rehab from various injuries last year, he said his tenacity was kind of his own worst enemy. He had to learn that overtraining can be just as corrosive to your health as an injury can be.
Yeah, you got to be smart.
Well, and to your point, McCaffrey was limited to just 3 games last season due to the high ankle sprain and the shoulder injury. So I think Carolina, if they learned anything, Mick, last year, it's the fact that having some depth at that position, you could say this about every position, is certainly crucial. However, Mike Davis, who filled in admirably for Christian McCaffrey, he stays within the division. He goes to sign with the Atlanta Falcons. They drafted Chuba Hubbard, who Jeff referenced in the 4th round this year. How do they feel, Mick? Not that they're ever hoping or anticipating that McCaffrey is going to get hurt, but you always need to protect yourself. How do they feel about the group behind McCaffrey this year, considering there's some new faces?
Yeah, pretty good. I'm glad you mentioned Chuba Hubbard, a running back, from Oklahoma State. 4th round pick. This athlete was 4th in the world in 2015 in the 100-meter hurdles. So he's twitchy. And I think the Panthers feel like that was one of the great value pickups that they got in the draft was Hubbard and his ability to come in. And, Matt Rhule won with speed. I can't really speak as much to his Temple teams. I'm sure they had the foot speed, but Baylor, that was a track team. And so I think we're seeing the model begin to emerge, the plan for success emerge in the Carolinas, and that is fast athletes that can slot to different positions. Matt Rhule substitutes. It's like a subway train at Penn Station. Calling the game, and I'm going to tell Papa you got to hang loose with his depth charts. Don't look down because you'll miss something because you got new guys coming in, new guys coming out. He believes that 2s become 1s, 3s become 2s, and so and then guys that have that dog in them. This draft class is filled with guys that will look you in the eye. They're very mannerly. They're just what you want off the field, but they get on the field and it's personal to these cats.
We're talking with Mick Mixon here on Giants.com, Big Blue Kickoff Live. He's the Carolina Panthers radio play-by-play announcer. The other element in play with the offense that we haven't tackled yet is the wide receiving core. Now, we brought up Robbie Anderson. He reunites with Sam Darnold, and Anderson coming off a very productive season. I actually was impressed, Mick, that 4 players had at least 1,000 yards from scrimmage last season, which probably gets overlooked because of the 5-11 record. And one of those guys is Curtis Samuel, who goes and signs with Washington. And Samuel was always an appealing player to me, Mick, because of his versatility, how you could bring him out of the backfield. He could be a wide receiver / running back. What do they feel about how they can fill that void, whether it be Terrace Marshall, who they drafted, or somebody else that you see emerging from that group that could be that additional playmaker to Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore?
I think it all starts, Lance, with the realization that sometimes you can't replace a guy. Curtis Samuel, was his own thing. And,
yeah.
There may not be another one of those on the roster. It'd be great if one of them emerged, and McCaffrey's certainly multi-skilled. I hate cliches. I just can't stand them, but, the old Swiss Army knife. Somebody punched me in the throat if I ever say that on the broadcast this year, but you get what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
And I want you to know that DJ Moore is special. It's a hidden kind of a thing that we got down here in this receiver that a lot of people don't know as much about, but he's very, very good without the ball, and with the ball, once he makes the catch, he becomes this incredible runner that he's very hard to bring down.
I know that we follow the draft pretty closely here on Big Blue Kickoff Live, and Terrace Marshall was one of the wide receivers that we all kind of enamored the way he works and the size, that kind of stuff. I know he will certainly add to that mix, and I doubt that he can choose Samuel, but I would imagine that group is going to be pretty tight, and along with Darnold being able to stretch the field, like you said earlier, Mick, being able to throw the ball down the field, he's got some good targets. Let's transition to the other side. Let me just real quickly, because I'm a Miami guy. guy, and even though I have to mention this, it's a Notre Dame guy, but he's on the team, so I guess I need to bring up Tommy Tremble. Tell us a little bit about him. He's a third-round guy. I think that the Panthers don't use their tight end in their offense all that well. Will this change a little bit now that you got a guy like that and Dan Arnold, free agent signing, more of a hand in the dirt, a little bit of a playmaker, I would say. But what do you think about that tight end position before we transition to the defense?
You totally faked me out. I thought you were going to go John Beeson or Greg Olson or some other Miami connection.
Those are my famous guys out there,
I know, man. But
Tremble's not famous guys.
Tremble, I think Tremble's a good example of what I was trying to speak on earlier, that he's soft-spoken. He looks great on the hoof. I mean, he looks like he could just go down into a coal mine and with his bare hands just come up with 16 tons of number 9 coal in an 8-hour time period of shift. And, I mean, just the blue collar for days. But he didn't get used that much in the passing game at Notre Dame. And I have to object in the most respectful possible way to the premise of your question, that the Panthers don't do a good job of using the tight end in this offense. I would refine that or twist it just a little to say that Joe Brady would love to use the tight end in this offense. This offense is yelling out from the highest mountaintops, please, can a tight end emerge who can get open, who can get separation, who can catch the ball, who can turn upfield. And so I think that Ian Thomas remains an intriguing prospect there. Manhurts is gone. Dan Arnold, as I mentioned, in his place. And I think the Panthers are hopeful that Tommy Tremble can be that weapon, and the Panthers can feed him.
Yeah, they have some intriguing options this year, as you just alluded to, Mick. And Arnold, I think, is a bit of an underrated guy who the Saints let go a few years ago and had some flashes with Arizona. The Cardinals didn't necessarily feature the tight end, but if Carolina's looking for a guy, I would not be surprised if Dan Arnold winds up emerging this season, because he certainly has the skill set to do that, to complement some of the young guys. As Jeff mentioned, let's now shift gears to the defensive side of the ball, and it was a youth movement. They used all 7 draft picks in 2020 to help shore up the defense. And Phil Snow was the defensive coordinator who came over with Matt Rhule. They've been together. This was a defense, and I'm very curious your perspective, Mick, where obviously with so much youth and inexperience, you figured, okay, they're going to go through their growing pains. I thought that at the end of last year, you really started to see the true potential. The Green Bay game is a game that jumps out to me where I thought they did a really good job containing Aaron Rodgers and company. How much of what the unit specifically did late last season is a stepping stone or a building block of what we could see more consistently this year?
I don't know. Maybe some, I think. But I think you've touched on the taproot of the 2020 Carolina Panthers, Lance, and it is simply that. Our third down defense last year struck confidence in the hearts of opposing offenses.
Yeah.
Teams are batting 12 of 14 and 9 of 11 or 9 of 12. I mean, it was just terrible. And when you got that you got them third and 13 from the minus 27, and the offense has got their helmets on, thinking they're going to get punted to, and then the team converts, it feels like you've been backed over by some skid steer, and it's terrible. So I think that with the great Matt Rhule, the inspirational stewardship, the losses in close games, all the other things for the Panthers is great to talk about. But the real story is that we couldn't get off the field on third down. So I think that has been addressed with the draft picks, with free agency, and so we'll see. But I think the Panthers are going places. If you don't hear anything else that your humble correspondent has said, and here in the American South we have the gift of humility. We're not the big market, big ego team. There's room on the bandwagon. So if you're a Giants fan, if you're a Jets fan, if you love the Patriots, carve out just a little place in your soul and in your heart to see the small market Carolina Panthers try to swing our sword this year and bring absolute victory to the Southeast. It's got a chance.
Well, it's going to be a tough division, that's for sure. I'll tell you this, the defense to me, when you look at how young it is, and that can be good and can be bad, but I think going forward, I think it's a good thing, and not to mention some of the free agents that they signed. Hassan Reddick is a guy that really has wreaked havoc for the Giants over the years, and then you've got Brian Burns, who is your consistent player. Another guy that I'm interested to hear you talk about is Yetter Gross Matos was a guy that we kind of had our eyes on last year. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get him. But talk a little bit about those edge rushers on that defense and how they can continue to put some pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah, we had just gotten word at one of the rookie minicamp sessions that it was okay to take our face masks off and practice our face coverings. And so I used that opportunity to breathe all over some of our defensive coaches and ask them some questions about, in particular, Hassan Reddick. And I don't think Phil Snow, the D coordinator here, would mind me telling you that he just perked right up when talking about Reddick. I said, what is Hassan Reddick good at? And Phil Snow said he plots very intelligent angles, that he understands the geometry of pursuit, and he gets to the ball carrier in a very efficient way. He's also a good pass rusher. He's not afraid to set a hip, and he can run support. He's a good tackler, but he's very good at running the passer down pressure in the pocket. So if he can stay healthy, then that could help our defense a lot. I mean, we need what he can bring. And then Yetur Gross Matos, I'm not sure. I really would say, Jeff, that he kind of had maybe that rookie fog last year. He had some good moments, but I think he kind of went good play, bad play, as if he wasn't really quite sure at times where to be and what to do. And sure. And I think the coaches expect that all that crepitus will be massaged out for his second year, and he's gonna realize some of his incredible potential.
Well, speaking real quickly, Lance, what happens with a lot of these young players in COVID last year is just the on-field work that they need in the off-season. The veterans can get by with it because they have the experience, but the younger players, that's what happens, and you kind of see it throughout the league with these young guys where you see these guys come out of college and they're so good at what they do, and then next thing you know, you don't really hear much about them. But last year was a prime example of how those guys really need to transition is real. It's tough, and if you don't get the on-field work as a young guy, it's tough to transition into the regular game. The other one is Juwan Short. Losing him last year, he's going to be back this year. How is his rehab going, and what's for him going forward?
Looking forward to finding out. Here's some good things. We go to camp late July. We train at a little school called Wofford University, Wofford College down in Spartanburg, and it's perfect. I mean, the setup is great. You can walk everywhere from the dorm to the cafeteria to the weight room, where I spend most of my free time, to the practice fields. It's all right there. And I think that there's tremendous excitement here. I guess any team could say that. If you had my colleagues on from other teams, they would probably say the same thing. But with what Matt Rhule, Joe Brady, Phil Snow, our new GM Scott Fitterer, they've just got that gravitas that makes you think that they know exactly what they're doing. That ball bounces in crazy ways. But the goal this year for the Panthers is double-digit wins, get in the playoffs, make a little noise, and see what happens.
Well, and I think they can accomplish that if these younger players on defense, as you laid out, can take the step forward in terms of chemistry and getting off the field on third down. And one of the guys that I think was probably extremely impressive and maybe somewhat of a pleasant surprise was safety Jeremy Chinn, the safety who they took in the second round in 2020. My goodness, Mick, 116 tackles. He had the game against the Vikings. He returned 2 fumbles for a touchdown. He was named Defensive Rookie of the Month several times. What impressed you the most of Jeremy Chinn last season, and how much do they look at him as, even though they drafted J.C. Horn this year in the first round, as him really being the guy that sets the pulse of the secondary?
Yeah, I guess if McCaffrey was the pit bull, maybe Chinn would be that German shepherd, that guard dog, that sentry dog with the ears pricked up, listening to everything, trying to take it all in, absorbs it. And Chinn is so versatile that, wouldn't you say, would it be a reach to say that this is kind of the way the NFL, this is the way the pro defenses are evolving because of how they're stressed by NFL offenses. With what modern quarterbacks can do, with what modern tight ends can do, with so many of these RPOs and the slicker game of option football now being introduced, that you got to have guys, you got to have those 210-pound guys that can make up for a mistake, that can run plays down, that can cover tight ends and backs in space. Am I way off as you see it, Jeff?
Oh, heck no, absolutely. If this game has evolved into that box safety, you got to have a guy like that that can make tackles and can cover for tight ends. And, it's a lot like the way that the tight end has evolved in the National Football League over the last 5 or 6 years. So these are things that coaches get smart at. They figure, it's all about matchups. Every week it's about matchups. And if you don't have that guy like Jeremy Chinn to share a little responsibility in plain safety and some cover corners, you need them, it's great to have it because you got depth there. Speaking of depth and speaking of covering, J.C. Horn, there was a lot of question this year coming out of the draft with where he was going to go, what was going to happen with him. What do you like about him? Have you seen that he's going to obviously going to step in and start for the Panthers this year? So I just would like to hear what you think about him.
He was the buzz of rookie mini camp, and even the press corps, even writers and broadcasters who've never had a jockstrap on in their whole lives, standing there looking at not Jeremy Chinn, but J.C. Horn, going, wait a second, that's J.C. Horn? That's what 6'1", 208 pounds looks like? That's not fair. He is a man.
Yeah.
He's got those sprinter's ankles, and then just put together from there up. And I mentioned earlier that attitude, that combative spirit, that feistiness. I'm not sure. I don't know how many liters of the Earth's oxygen the Panthers will use up this year in trash talking, but hopefully these players will have enough oxygen remaining to be diverted to their muscles.
Well, as you mentioned, with so much depth on this team, maybe they'll spread the wealth in terms of the trash talking. That may be a competition to monitor behind closed doors as well as on the field. But on a related note to depth and somewhat of what Jeff was talking about earlier and Mick, you hit on, it got me thinking about the fact that since this defense was so young, and since it was an unconventional offseason where everything was virtual, and I think to a certain degree the Giants saw the same challenges, especially when you have a new scheme. From what you're seeing during the offseason program this year, and that Phil Snow is getting these guys now on the field, how much of a benefit do you think that will be for the progress of this group to shore up some of the issues that were seen last year, such as third down that you said, Mick, which I'm not making excuses, and I'm not saying that was just because they had not much on field work, but it's fair to say that when you're a young guy and you're making the transition from college to the pros, there's a lot of things on your plate in addition to obviously executing. So how much could perhaps the benefit of somewhat of a conventional offseason program by default help this unit, maybe more so than any other factor?
What our coaches and players are saying, and what Matt Rhule has said about this, Lance, is that this is bigger than life its own self. That for the Panthers, more than maybe any other team in the league, because of how young Carolina is, I think it's the youngest roster.
Yeah.
If it's not the youngest roster in the league, it's right up there. Number two, new coaches coming in. These coaches hadn't even had a chance to meet one another, much less try to coach their team up when the COVID thing hit. So that the Panthers were able to clap as one and even get out of the huddle opening day remains one of the, and for this team to have stayed together all year, won 5 games, hung in there, and a lot more, remains one of the most amazing things. I'm much older than both you guys. I'm 62 and a half years old. It remains one of the most amazing things that I've seen in sports. It was inspirational to see. Now, we don't want any medals for winning 5 games this year. That's not the standard, but it could have been a lot worse.
No doubt about it.
We're nearing the end of our conversation, but I have to include the special teams in this. Of course, right? What kind of interview would this be without talking about that? Particularly my man Chase Blackburn, coach, the special teams coordinator there, who was one of the heroes of 2011, with their basically celebrating the 10th anniversary already of that Super Bowl team. What do you think about the special teams? What Chase has brought to that unit, and give me a little prognosis for them going forward this year.
I think he's a head coach in waiting, don't you, Jeff? He's got.
Well, he's certainly smart enough, that's for sure.
He is great communicator. Has the pedigree from having played at the highest levels of the game, and just to watch him coach, because I love special teams. I identify with snappers and punters and kickers more so than with the linebackers and the DNs and all, common to a lot of broadcasters that wanted so badly to be able to play but were cheated out of the genetics necessary to propel us to that kind of life. But, Chase Blackburn he's got sort of that ability to make it understandable for the guys. And I would love every time I walk by one of his meetings, I always stop for a minute and kind of press my face against the door and just listen to him teach, because you can, half the stuff he's saying, I don't know what it means, but I like hearing him talk anyway.
Yeah. Well, one thing about, as many years as I played in the National Football League, there was certainly a lot of men and guys like Chase Blackburn. They may not have been the most talented on the field, but by far the smartest, and were always in the right position to make plays, and that's what made them so good. And I'm certainly impressed with the fact that Chase brings that type of psychology to the meeting room to let these guys understand that, hey, most of the special teams guys, you know this, Vic, that you're not going to get a chance to start at your position until a little later in your career. So right now, you're going to make the most of this, and this is the most of the young guys, and I'm going to put you in positions to succeed. That's the recipe for a great coach, to someone that's going to do great things going forward. And I think that, Carolina has always had great special teams. From, the years and years when I was kicking to Steve Smith, that was a chore. Trust me, every time I saw that guy line up, it was like, oh boy. But they've always had very solid special teams, and Chase is definitely carrying that trend.
One of the great moments, the Giants have certainly had a lot of success against the Panthers, but one of the great moments in Panther history was the Giants, the win at New York in the 2005 playoffs. You guys were packing, and for the Panthers to quiet that crowd, I got chills right now just thinking about calling that game how long ago was that? 16 years ago.
Yeah, that game was that was a tough one. That was one of those years where, in fact, we don't have time to really go into it, but I actually semi-retired after that game, and I was able to come back the following year. Coach Thompson convinced me to come back and play, but that was tough. That was a tough game, and that was just one of those things where we had no idea that Carolina could beat us that day, but they certainly did.
The next time I'm on with you, we won't do it now. I know we're in a time jam, but Jeff, the next time we're on, I want to talk about Chris. Was it Chris Snee that married Tom Coughlin's daughter? Am I right on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
So I want to learn. I want to know all the psychology of that and how and what kind of stress that put on Chris.
Well, I'm sure that when we play you this year, we like to have some guests on our show for our pregame show, and maybe I don't know, Lance, you might be able to kind of come out and stick on there, don't you think?
Absolutely. We could go into the entire Coughlin and Christie family tree. I'm sure Giants fans would even be interested in hearing Jeff's war stories with respect to that, Mick. So you may give us some food for thought.
You guys are great, man. I appreciate so much you having me on.
Well, listen, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the program. He is Mick Mixon, the radio play-by-play announcer for the Carolina Panthers. And, Mick, before we let you go, I know this is going to be your last hurrah. The team you had announced that you're retiring after this season.
Oh, wow.
So congratulations to you for a very lengthy career calling Carolina Panthers games, and all the best to you moving forward.
No, that's sweet of you to say. I'm nobody. I never tackled anybody or scored a touchdown or spiked the ball in the end zone, but all I ever wanted to be was a sports announcer, and I've enjoyed every second of it, so thanks for mentioning that.
Not a problem.
And you know what? I definitely echo that. Mick, that's great. Congratulations. How many years now were you doing the work?
This will be my 17th with the Panthers.
That's awesome. Congratulations. And, hey, got one more left. Go out with the bang, huh?
Yeah, please, no rocking chairs or fiber drinks or Geritol or anything. I'll be all right.
All right, so I guess we're going to have to then cut the plan short. We were going to put the rocking chair together to give to you when you come to MetLife Stadium, Mick. So we'll have them put that to the side then. We won't have them continue those plans. So.
Yeah, no, I got a tractor out here with a lot of work to do once I retire. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, listen, all the best, and once again, greatly appreciate you taking the time to break down the Panthers, and we look forward to seeing you in a few months in East Rutherford, New Jersey.
Sounds good, man. Y'all come see me in the press box.
Absolutely.